Kicking off our list at level 1 is Kurt Barlow from Stephen King's Salem's Lot. This is the vampire that brought pure evil to small-town America, and he's far more terrifying than most people remember. Barlow represents the classic European vampire transplanted into modern American soil, and what makes him deadly isn't just his powers, it's his methodology. This is a vampire who doesn't just feed, he systematically corrupts an entire town, turning neighbor against neighbor, creating a spreading infection of undeath that transforms Jerusalem's Lot from a sleepy Maine community into a nightmare. Barlow has the traditional vampire arsenal, superhuman strength that allows him to tear through humans effortlessly, hypnotic powers that can enthrall victims from a distance, the ability to command his vampire spawn like a dark general commanding an army. He's patient, intelligent, and utterly without mercy. He doesn't seduce or charm. He dominates through sheer malevolent will. But here's why he's at number 1. For all his terrifying presence and strategic mind, Barlow is ultimately bound by traditional vampire rules. Sunlight is fatal. A stake through the heart will kill him. He needs to be invited into private homes. Holy symbols can repel him if wielded with true faith. He's immensely powerful within his limitations, but those limitations exist and can be exploited by determined humans. What makes Barlow truly chilling is the speed at which he corrupts everything around him, but he's still ultimately vulnerable to the classic methods of vampire destruction. He's dangerous, absolutely. He nearly destroyed an entire town, but compared to what's coming on this list, he's just getting started. But don't worry, things are about to get much darker. Level 2, Count Orlok from Nosferatu. At number 2, we have the vampire that defined horror for generations, Count Orlok, the nightmare from Nosferatu. If Barlow is a punk with fangs, Orlok is pure primal dread given form. Look at him. This isn't a seductive, charming vampire. Orlok is a walking corpse, rat-like features, elongated fingers like spider legs, bald and gaunt with eyes that pierce through your soul. He doesn't seduce his victims. He stalks them. He brings plague wherever he goes, spreading death through entire cities like a supernatural epidemic. Orlok's powers go beyond just physical strength. He commands rats and pestilence. He can rise from his coffin and cross great distances. Unlike many vampires, he doesn't need an invitation to enter your home. He brings the apocalypse right to your doorstep. The very presence of Orlok corrupts and destroys everything around him. So why isn't he higher on this list? Because for all his terrifying presence, Orlok still has traditional vampire weaknesses. Sunlight destroys him. In fact, it's the climax of his story. He must rest in his native soil. He's bound to certain rules, certain patterns of behavior that can be exploited. Orlok represents the transition from folklore to cinema horror, but we're about to meet vampires who've evolved far beyond their gothic origins. Level 3, Lestat de Lioncourt from the Vampire Chronicles. Coming in at number 3 is the Brat Prince himself, Lestat de Lioncourt from Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles. And here's where we start seeing a significant power jump. Lestat isn't just strong, he's ancient, which in vampire terms means exponentially more powerful. We're talking flight, telepathy, pyrokinesis, and the ability to move faster than the human eye can track. He can crush bones with a casual gesture and hypnotize victims with nothing but his voice and his gaze. But what makes Lestat truly formidable isn't just his powers, it's his mind. This is a vampire who has survived for centuries by being clever, adaptable, and utterly ruthless when necessary. He's faced down ancient vampire gods, survived being buried alive for decades, and even had his body stolen, only to claw his way back to existence. Lestat redefined what vampires could be in popular culture. He's not hiding in the shadows. He becomes a rock star, writes autobiographies, reveals himself to the world. He's fearless in a way that makes him incredibly dangerous because he doesn't play by anyone's rules. However, Lestat still operates within a universe with clear hierarchical power structures. There are older, stronger vampires who can challenge him. He can be hurt, even destroyed, by supernatural means. He's not invincible, just incredibly hard to kill. And that distinction matters as we climb higher on this list. Before we continue to the next level, if you're enjoying this ranking so far, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Legendate for more deep dives into the most powerful beings in fiction and folklore. Trust me, the next 3 vampires are going to blow your mind, because the next vampire, they don't just break the rules, they rewrite them. Level 4, Alucard from Helsing. At number 4, we enter truly apocalyptic territory with Alucard from Helsing. And fair warning, this is where the power scaling gets absolutely insane. Alucard isn't just a vampire, he's a living weapon of mass destruction. This is Count Dracula himself, but enslaved by the Helsing organization and unleashed on supernatural threats. His powers, where do I even start? Superhuman strength that lets him casually tear through entire armies. Regeneration so advanced that he can regrow his entire body from a puddle of blood. Immortality backed by literally millions of absorbed souls, meaning you'd have to kill him millions of times over to actually destroy him. He can manipulate shadows, phase through walls, summon familiars, and wield guns that fire bullets blessed with his own blood. But here's what makes Alucard truly terrifying. He's bored. This vampire is so overwhelmingly powerful that nothing challenges him anymore. He craves death, specifically death at the hands of a worthy human opponent, because he's already conquered everything else. Imagine being so deadly that your greatest enemy is your own immortality. In battle, Alucard doesn't fight. He toys with his opponents like a cat with a mouse. He lets enemies shoot him, stab him, blow him apart, just so he can experience something resembling danger before he inevitably regenerates and obliterates them. He releases the full scope of his power, so rarely that when he does, it's literally apocalyptic. So why isn't he higher? Because despite all this power, Alucard can be bound, controlled, and defeated through very specific supernatural means. His contract with Helsing limits him. The ritual that could destroy all his souls exists. He operates within rules. Twisted, dark rules, but rules nonetheless. But we're about to meet vampires who transcend even these godlike powers. Level 5, Count Dracula, Bram Stoker's original. At number 5, we return to the source, the original. The vampire that started it all, Count Dracula from Bram Stoker's 1897 novel. And before you say, wait, shouldn't the original be less powerful? Let me explain why the book version of Dracula is far more terrifying than you remember. Most adaptations water Dracula down, but in Stoker's novel, the Count is shockingly powerful and versatile. Yes, he has superhuman strength and can scale walls like a lizard. Yes, he's immortal and has hypnotic powers. But here's what the movies often forget. Dracula is also a brilliant strategist and scholar. This vampire has lived for centuries, accumulating knowledge of law, languages, history, and manipulation. He doesn't just attack, he plans. He purchases properties across London. He studies shipping manifests and legal loopholes. He understands human psychology better than humans do. In the novel, it takes an entire team of the era's brightest minds months to even figure out how to track him, let alone stop him, and his powers are far more diverse than most realize. Dracula can transform into a wolf, a bat, or mist. He controls the weather, summoning storms and fog. He commands wolves and rats. He doesn't need to be invited into public spaces. And while sunlight weakens him, it doesn't kill him. In the book, he walks around London in broad daylight, just significantly less powerful. What puts Dracula at number 3 is the combination of raw power, tactical genius, and adaptability. He's not just a monster, he's an apex predator who has evolved over centuries to exploit every weakness in human society. He's been the template for nearly every vampire since for a reason, because the original concept is genuinely one of the most dangerous. However, Dracula can still be killed through specific means: the stake, the beheading, the sacred wafer. He has weaknesses that can be exploited, and that's what separates him from our final 2 entries. Now we're entering the top 2 most powerful vampires ever conceived, and I guarantee at least one of these will surprise you. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our rankings and breakdowns here on Legendate. Let's continue. Level 6, D from Vampire Hunter, D. At number 6, we have a vampire who exists on an entirely different plane of power. D, the Dampier, half vampire, half human, from Vampire Hunter D. And we're now in territory where power stops being measured in physical terms and starts being measured in existential ones. To understand D's power level, you need to understand his world. This is a post-apocalyptic future where vampires didn't just rule humanity, they built an empire that spanned the entire planet for thousands of years, wielding technology indistinguishable from magic. They reshaped the world itself, and D is the son of the most powerful vampire who ever existed, Count Dracula, reimagined as the vampire god-king of this reality. D is fast enough to deflect lasers, strong enough to cut through armored vehicles with his sword. He has regeneration that allows him to survive injuries that would vaporize normal vampires. He ages so slowly that over thousands of years, he appears unchanged. He resists vampire weaknesses. Sunlight weakens him but doesn't kill him. Stakes won't work. Most supernatural powers can't even affect him. But his most terrifying power? The parasite in his left hand. A sentient entity that can absorb magic, drain life force, negate supernatural abilities, and even consume dimensions. Enemies don't just fight D, they fight something that can erase their very existence from reality. What makes D number 6 isn't just his overwhelming power, it's that he's functionally unkillable by any conventional means, and exists in a universe where the power ceiling is already astronomical. He walks through battlefields of supernatural horrors that would terrify even Alucard, and he does it alone, eternally, impossibly. So why isn't he at the top? Because D, for all his power, is still a physical being who exists within the framework of his universe. He can be challenged, he can bleed, and most importantly, his powers, while godlike, are definable and comprehensible. Which brings us to the top and last level, level 7. And now, the vampire who sits at the apex of power and deadliness. The one who doesn't just break reality, the one who is reality. At number 7 is the unnamed vampire from Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. Wait, what? Not some ancient god vampire? Not Kane from World of Darkness? Not some anime reality warper? Here's why this is the most powerful and deadly vampire concept ever created. Because in Matheson's novel, vampires don't just threaten humanity, they replace it entirely. Every other vampire on this list is an exception, a monster in a world of humans. But in I Am Legend, vampires become the new norm. They're not supernatural anymore. They're a bacterial infection, a scientific reality, a new stage in human evolution. They rebuild society, they create culture, they establish morality. And in this new world, the last human, the protagonist, isn't the hero. He's the monster. He's the boogeyman that the vampire children are warned about. This is power beyond physical strength or supernatural abilities. This is the power to fundamentally redefine what it means to be the dominant species on Earth. These vampires don't need to be individually unstoppable. They're collectively inevitable. They're not fighting against humanity. They've already won. The story is already over before it begins. Every other vampire fears death, fears humanity organizing against them. But the vampires of I Am Legend have nothing to fear because they've already inherited the earth. The last human is the one living in fear, hiding, desperate, doomed. And that's what makes them the deadliest. Not because they kill the most people, but because they render the very concept of humanity extinct. Every other vampire is a threat. These vampires are evolution itself. They're not the monster in the story. They're the authors of the new story, and humans aren't even a footnote. From Kurt Barlow's systematic corruption to the existential horror of a post-human vampire world, we've journeyed through 7 levels of vampire power that range from deadly to absolutely apocalyptic. But here's my question for you. Did I get it right? Who would you put at the top at number 7? Did I miss a vampire that belongs on this list? Drop your picks in the comments below, and if you can defend why your vampire is more powerful than the literal end of humanity, I want to hear it. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the vampire power hierarchy, make sure you're subscribed to Legendate for more rankings, breakdowns, and deep dives into legendary creatures and characters. Hit that like button and let me know what ranking you want to see next. Werewolves, dragons, anime protagonists? Drop your suggestions in the comments. Until next time, stay safe out there. And remember, in the dark, something is always watching. This is Legendate, and we'll see you in the next one.